So you've probably noticed something happening lately if you've been paying attention to tech news. Massive windowless buildings are popping up all over the world. In rural areas, next to power plants, on the edge of cities, and even in smaller towns and communities. And if you've ever driven past one and wondered what it was almost certainly a data center. Now, data centers have been around forever. Companies have used them for decades to keep their websites running, store files, process payments, and all that. But something has changed, and that something is the AI boom. Here's how it works. When you ask an AI agent a question, any AI, doesn't matter, that question doesn't get answered on your phone or your laptop. It gets sent to a massive building full of specialized hardware, processed there, and then sent back to you almost instantly, every single time. And for every single person using it simultaneously. According to Forbes, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta are projected to spend over $700 billion on AI infrastructure in 2026 alone, up sharply from about $410 billion the year before. And Goldman Sachs estimates that the US data center power demand could nearly double from about 31 gigawatts in 2025 to 66 gigawatts by 2027. That's not a typo. That's enormous amount of electricity, probably enough to power entire cities. And it's all going to buildings that most people drive past without a second thought. And it gets worse when you zoom in on what these things actually cost communities. A single large data center can consume millions of gallons of water each day, as much as tens of thousands of people. The largest campuses can draw hundreds of megawatts of power, straining local grids. Active local and state moratoriums or restrictions on data centers climbed from a handful in 2025 to roughly 78 a year later, because communities are starting to push back. And honestly, you can't really blame them. So that's the world we're in right now. AI is hungry, data centers are multiplying to feed it, and the environmental and infrastructure costs are real and growing. By the way, if you're interested in what the internet is actually heading and what alternatives might look like, hit that subscribe button. That's exactly what this channel is about, and I've got a lot more coming your way. So here's a question nobody seems to be asking out loud. Does it have to be this way? Think about what a data center actually is at its fundamental level. It's just a bunch of computers in one place doing computational work. That's it. Decentralization isn't a technical requirement. It's just a business model. It's how companies like Google and Amazon choose to structure things because it's much easier to control and easier to monetize for them. But what if instead of sending your AI prompt to one company's massive building, what if that compute power was distributed across thousands of individual computers all over the world? Regular people's machines running as nodes on a network, collectively handling the workload without any single company in the middle. That's not science fiction, that's just a different architectural choice, and it's one that peer-to-peer networks are uniquely positioned to make. And this is where something like Qortal becomes really interesting to think about in this context. Right now, Qortal is a peer-to-peer data network where data, apps, messaging, and digital identities all live across distributed nodes run by regular people around the world. In such a scenario, there are no centralized servers and no company controlling the infrastructure. It's controlled by the users themselves of the network. Although it hasn't been implemented yet, that same logic can be extended to AI computation. Imagine a future where if your AI prompt was going to a Microsoft data center in Virginia, instead it gets distributed across nodes in the Qortal network, processed in small chunks across hundreds of machines, and returned to you without any corporation ever touching it. There would be no single point of failure and no data center guzzling millions of gallons of water. So say goodbye to the $700 billion infrastructure arms race. The environmental math alone is compelling. Instead of building massive specialized campuses in places with cheap electricity, you're using the compute power that already exists on machines that are already running spread across the world. The energy cost gets distributed across many different computers. The infrastructure cost also gets distributed the same way. And crucially, the control gets distributed as well. It's no longer in the hands of giant corporations like it is now. Now, I want to be straightforward with you. This isn't something that it currently exists on Qortal. It's a direction that can be taken, not a finished product. But the architecture to make it possible is already in place. The network is already there, the nodes are already running. All that we're missing is a few scrappy developers willing to put in the work to implement it on Qortal. And when you look at where the current model is, hundreds of billions of dollars, hundreds of gigawatts, millions of gallons of water, all concentrated in the hands of maybe 5 companies, it's worth asking whether we actually want to keep building the internet that way, or whether a different model is entirely possible, because let's face it, the data centers being built right now, they're not inevitable. They're a choice being made by a handful of giant corporations, and different choices are still on the table. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.